You're ready, Bill.
We're all here and
Thank you.
ready to dance.
Tonight is Tuesday, March 5th. You are watching, we are at Board of Selectmen meeting in Wenham. This meeting was called to order at approximately 5:10 p.m. in order for us to conduct an executive session. The agenda, if anyone is noticing, has actually 3 executive sessions on it. We had time to complete the first one. So just so that everyone knows that we didn't actually go into executive session for the second 2 on that. That being said, we are now in open session and we will begin our meeting as we always do, except 5 minutes late, 6:35, with public input on items not on the agenda. Hearing none, we will move to announcements, which I have tonight.
Catherine, do you want to mention Jack?
Oh, I'm sorry, and I have that written right here. Jack Wilhelm is out of town, but is participating remotely. So you will hear his voice occasionally, as this is a legal, he has the legal ability to do that. The only difference that we'll note is that because he's participating remotely, all of our votes, any of our votes, will be roll call votes. We do have a quorum here, and Jack is calling us from a remote
Location. And we won't say that it's the Crimea.
No.
It's a warmer climate.
A warmer climate. But we thank him for taking the time out of his time off to be with us tonight. Okay.
Oh, and something I learned last evening about remote meeting attendance is that you can have as many as 2 or 3, as long as you have quorum.
Right.
There's a chair or a designee and a quorum.
And a quorum.
Right.
Then you can have 2 or 3
Right.
that are not,
And
if
I
you have a
think
larger
This
group.
conference, this phone actually could handle more than one, theoretically.
Theoretically.
Okay. So we have some announcements tonight. There's one that is different from, there's only one new one from last night. But I will say Thursday, March 21st at 7 p.m. here in the Selectmen's Room, a listening session will be held to present and discuss the town's draft hazard mitigation plan and municipal vulnerability preparedness plan. The town has been working with Weston and Sampson since last fall and is looking for public input in order to finalize both plans. Questions may be directed to our planning coordinator, Margaret Hoffman. Understanding that's, for me anyway, that was a little obtuse. I looked at their flyer, which is nicely done, and there's a little bit more description, so I will read this that says the plan that this input session is regarding, will identify natural and climate change hazards affecting Wenham. It will also present strategies that the town can take to reduce the impact of these hazards. So this is an input session to discuss that particular plan, March 21st. Moving on to our town meeting related announcements, the warrant hearing for our annual town meeting will be held in the Bessie Bucher Elementary Multipurpose Room on Monday, April 1st at 7 p.m. On Saturday, April 6th at 12 p.m., the Wenham Village Improvement Society will provide a free to residents of Wenham luncheon, and it will be held in the Bessie Bucher Elementary Multipurpose Room prior to our annual town meeting, which is in the Perkins Auditorium and begins at 1 p.m. Our annual town election will be held at Town Hall on Thursday, April 11th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Voters must be registered by March 15th to vote in the annual town election. Please contact the town clerk's office for information on absentee voting, which will be available for the annual town election. And if anyone is watching these meetings and doesn't get these dates by now, I'm going to be sad. Okay, that's it for announcements. I don't believe that we have any reports since we're meeting daily these days.
I do just have one update to give on that front.
Sure. Sorry, didn't mean to pass
And
over.
something that I had neglected to put in the announcements for this meeting. The Wenham and Hamilton Boards of Health are holding a joint public hearing on Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. here in Wenham Town Hall in this room. And it's the purpose of that hearing is to gather public input on regulations that are entitled Prohibiting Tobacco Products in Schools. And those regulations would create enforcement fines that could be levied against anyone using tobacco products, including but not limited to cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and nicotine products on a school campus. A draft copy of those regulations can be found in the Board of Health office at Wenham Town Hall or Hamilton Town Hall during regular business hours. So this is a notice that's been published in the Chronicle the past couple weeks, and just wanted to make sure that that was on everybody's radar. And again, just missed including it as an announcement on the agenda.
Those regulations are totally within the authority and purview of the boards of health. So
Correct.
that's why they're having the hearing, and they will decide what if.
And this has come out of discussions with school officials over the past several months. If you will recall, back when we started our discussion around the warrant for town meeting, there was originally potentially a warrant article that was related to this issue that was then later pulled. But the issue nonetheless is still important and going to be discussed at that hearing.
Yep, it's not just important in our town, but most towns.
Yeah, there was a big article just the other day in the Salem News about the AG trying to address the issue.
Well, that's proactive of our boards of health. I'm glad they're working together in our towns. They would have to in order to be effective.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay. So we'll move on to new business. The first item in new business is an appointment. And
Yes, we
John
have an
has that
appointment
motion.
as the Board of Elections Registrar. So I will read the motion, and if there's any question or discussion, we'll follow up. I move to appoint Daniel Curran to the Board of Election Registrars for a term beginning on March 5th, 2019, for the purpose of the voter residency compliant hearing and resolution. Is there a second?
Jack, do you want to second?
Yeah, I'll second that. I think he was on the board before. He resigned, from what I understand, because he thought he was moving out of town, changed his mind, still in town, wants to be back in the Board of Registrars. So I'm in favor of this appointment.
Okay, yep.
And for the purposes of a temporary
It's on a temporary basis.
for the purposes of a particular hearing.
Correct.
Is my understanding.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so is there?
Any further question or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeses. Okay.
All right, next is...
Oh, gosh. You should be an
Need to
expert.
vote to reopen.
You should be an expert on this one by now, John.
Open,
So-
close, open, close. It's
This
like
is
a closet door or
Reopen
something.
town meeting warrant.
All right, we need to reopen our town warrant again, this is the proper way to do it. I move the Board of Selectmen reopen the April 6, 2019 annual town meeting warrant. Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion?
Not for me.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Yes, yes, yes.
Aye.
Sorry,
Aye.
should be a voice vote. 3 yeses.
All right.
A roll call vote.
I actually voted yes twice, so that's actually 4-1.
Well, you get 2 attaboys for that one.
Okay, next on our agenda is to place the school operating override questions on the April 2019 ballot. And
Okay, so this
has
is a
that
bit of a
motion.
lengthy motion, so bear with me. I move the Board of Selectmen place the proposed form of Proposition 2.5 operating override questions on the April 11th, 2019 ballot. As it states, shall the town of Wenham be allowed to assess an additional $499,145 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the town of Wenham's annual assessment for the fiscal year 2020 Hamilton Wenham Regional School District operating budget as adopted by the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee. shall the town of Wenham be allowed to assess an additional $116,119 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the town of Wenham's annual assessment for the fiscal year 2020 Hamilton and Wenham Regional School District operating budget, particularly as adopted by the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee for the for other post-employment benefits and school resource officer.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I could speak to that for a minute. Obviously, a little different scenario this year than last, and difficult to differentiate between the two. And so this is something that we've been working with town council on, and ultimately this is the language that town council recommends, fully recognizing that the school committee has discretion on what those funds would be used for, absent including language pointing to something that was different between the two.
Can I interrupt you one second? You said the school committee has discretion. I thought this was the superintendent's budget.
No, this
This is the school committee's budget.
They have voted their budget.
They have voted their budget.
Oh, they voted the superintendent's budget.
Well, ultimately they did, but
Yes,
that was
okay.
not necessarily, so
As
this
soon
is,
as they
this,
voted, it
I mean,
changed
they
to
didn't
being
come
the
up with
superintendent.
something else.
no,
They-
but it is the school committee's budget,
Right.
because
Okay.
that is the budget that they ultimately adopted. It was the same as the superintendent's, but it's now their budget. And they have,
Thank you. I got caught short
Yep.
last night, not quite understanding the question being asked. Okay, thank you.
but they, they have discretion on how their budget is spent. But town council thought that without putting some kind of language in there, it would be basically impossible for the residents at town meeting and at the ballot to distinguish why there were two ballot questions for school operating override. And so that language is not binding, but informational, is essentially how it was relayed.
So this is two different questions,
Yep,
right? Two different ballot questions.
correct.
Right. Well, if council says this is the way to do it, it doesn't bind them, who am I to? I definitely agree that it's a benefit to have a differentiation so people understand what each ballot question is.
having
And
it
if this
separated, yep.
can do that without binding the school district to something that's not legal to bind them to,
Yep,
sounds fine to me.
okay,
I think that's what you said.
yes.
Okay. That's all I have on that one.
Okay,
Jack, you have anything on that one?
No, go ahead.
all right. All those in favor?
We need a
Aye.
roll call vote again, so Jack says aye, yes. Catherine, John,
Aye.
okay. We'll get in the habit of doing that eventually, but maybe by the end of the meeting. So that concludes our new business. And under old business, when this agenda, just as an explanation, both agendas were put together, not knowing what we would finish on one night and would flow into the next night. So there wasn't intentionally some duplication. And I say that because the next item on the agenda is a review, was on last night's as well, review of property appraisal report, and we passed over that last night. There's nothing to report. We'll pass over that again tonight. And the same is true of the Maple Woods Housing Project update. We have no update tonight. So we'll move on to letter G, which is a discussion of potential backup dates for town meeting continuation. And that's John again.
Yes. Let's see if I can figure out where this is.
Under G.
Yeah. And we skipped over a couple there.
Here's G. All right. No, is there a motion here? or-
There's no motion, this is
It's
just
just
for
simply
discussion. Yeah.
discussion,
So
okay.
this was just following up on the discussion that we had a week or so ago, looking at a whole
Okay,
list
so
of
what we're-
potential gates.
Yeah, what we're trying to do for the public's interest is if we need a second date for town meeting, if we do not complete our business on town meeting day, we're trying to figure out what the most appropriate day would be to do that, day or night to do that.
Yep, so we pulled all of the
Yep.
relevant officials to see about their availability and availability of obviously the Bucher School. And ultimately, coming out of that, we were looking at two potential dates. One was Wednesday, April 10th, and then the other was Thursday, April 25th, with a preference for the 10th if possible. I reached out to the superintendent to check. That's a standing school committee meeting night, and they are, in fact, meeting that night and have some significant items on their agenda. So the Bucher School isn't available that night, so it looks like the backup date is going to be Thursday, April 25th.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the emails going back and forth, who can, who can't, who's conflicted, and so forth. So that's the date you come up with.
Yeah, I mean, we're skipping the week of school vacation and holiday.
Okay.
And then once you get on the other side of the week, there was some conversation around that Monday, but then ultimately the board decided that Thursday would be a better option of that week.
So that, so we go with that backup date, that date would be communicated in our, get out the vote communications.
I suppose, I assume it would also be in the warrant book?
Yes.
Yeah, should be.
You know, at the beginning, the end,
Yeah, I
somewhere in
mean,
there to
Yeah,
let people know.
everyone will receive that.
If you want to come back.
And it's, best for people to know in advance.
Yep. And it's a couple weeks out, so it's not, I mean, we do have some time there.
Yeah,
Right.
when this happened last year, trying to do that on the floor, it was just,
Yeah, that wasn't pretty.
Yep, and that was one of the takeaways from last year, was we wanted to make sure
Good.
that we had that in
And
place.
I think going forward to next year already, we probably should set the second date sooner. Because possibly, I don't know how the timing may work out to be the same, but we might be able to have them closer together if we start asking sooner for potentials. But, all right, so do we need to vote that, or we're just gonna go with that?
If the board's okay with
Everybody
that?
agree? Jack, you okay with that?
yep.
I
All
am.
right, it was your idea, so hope you still are.
I am.
Okay, so backup date, April 25th. Let's
Okay.
hope we don't need it, because it's a long way away from the first date. Okay, the next item on our agenda,
With that in
now it
mind,
says final review.
final.
Because this warrant is going to print shortly, right? As in the next day or so? So
As in the
it
next
better be
couple
final?
days, you got it.
Okay. We concluded last night, let me just make sure I'm right about this, with just a few open issues. So maybe we could just cover those first.
Yep.
And I know,
So I'll just go through them numerically.
yeah,
Yeah,
The first one, and it's nothing that needs any action taken on, just one to call out the fact that we did add in language to Article 4, consistent with the ballot question that would call out the fact that that operating override is to be used to fund OPEB and the school resource officer.
right.
oh, the same
It's a-
motion.
consistent with the
just,
language.
Yep, so no action necessary, just in working with town council and in trying to make sure that the ballot question aligned with the warrant article. We
Okay.
wanted to be consistent there. The next issue, that we had left open was Article 12, the CPC article number 6, adding in language around the $50,000 for the community house and trying to mirror what
Right.
Hamilton had put in place in terms of a deadline for construction to start. And so that language has been added from town council, and it is, I should just note that it's in line with the same contingent language that was included for number 3, the Maple Woods vote, around saying this is the deadline for the project to commence, but then giving the board discretion if the community comes to the board and says, demonstrates that they've made a good faith effort towards, moving things along and just haven't been able to start the project for whatever reason.
Jack, you're up to speed on this change?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So I understand that the timing is consistent with Hamilton. Does Hamilton also allow for an extension? Or
They don't.
They do not? Okay. No real reason why we have to be. It
Exactly
doesn't
the
matter
same.
that it's.
We don't
exactly
have to
the
be
same. The
twinsies
date-
on everything.
Well, the date is probably.
The date is the
important.
same, and the fact that
But-
it's project commencement, not project completion.
Right.
It's saying that they
Okay.
have to get started by then.
Okay,
So the board did not take a vote on that, a recommendation vote on that, because that was
We held
outstanding,
back.
because we were waiting for that language.
So we have.
so I will make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on the CPC item number 6 relative to $50,000 for the community house.
I will second.
Agree.
Motion.
I agree. Yay.
Yes,
I
yes.
I vote yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Aye, whatever.
3 yeses.
Aye.
Aye,
Yes.
yes.
Yay.
Aye, aye, matey.
Okay.
The next one is Article 13, the Historic District Historical Commission bylaw amendment. Catherine, you had brought up the fact that the new Section 1 of the Historic District Commission
Right.
did not reference the fact that their jurisdiction for that purpose was specific to the historic district. So that language has been added in.
It's pretty, I think, pretty benign. It says within the historic district.
And we did say within the historic districts, and if with a parenthesis, so that if, when and if there were ever a case that there was another historic district, that we wouldn't have to amend the, this bylaw. That portion
We're a
of the-
growing town, Jack. Got a plan for the
Well,
bigger.
every year we get more historic, right?
Oh, yeah. That's great.
So similarly, because that language change was still out there, the board didn't take up that at the last meeting.
I asked for it. I'm perfectly satisfied. I will move that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on the article relative to, I'm not going to give it a number, but presently 13, bylaw amendment, Historic District Commission / Historical Commission.
I'll second your motion.
So,
I agree.
okay, yes?
Yay. Yes.
Yes. Okay, 3 yeses.
Okay, the next one, just a note really, as part of our discussion last night around the zoning bylaw amendment for signs.
All right.
Well, it's actually, there's 2 things. One is a couple of us went through and made sure that all of the changes were appropriately either bold or deletions in strike-through. So it does look a little different. Nothing substantive, just in terms of presentation, to make sure that what is reflected here accurately represents what was in place versus what we're proposing.
So what's bold is new.
What's bold is new,
And
And what's-
purple is really new.
and what's purple is what's really new. So we can talk about that piece. So that was the one other, how do we define what's in a public way?
Public way.
We've taken a stab at it.
Yeah.
So again, this does not take away from the fact that the Board of Selectmen will now have the ability to create their own policy around non-municipal signs on public property and defining what that public property is and where it is and how long the signs can be there and so forth. But under 7.3 General Standards for Signs E, it currently says no sign or sign structure shall interfere in any way with a public way, including sidewalks. And the question was, what's a public way? And so we have tried to put a point on what that is, so there is a clear definition. So what we have said instead is eliminating the reference to a public way and saying that it shall not interfere in any way with a paved roadway or sidewalk on a public way or adjacent public property between a paved roadway and sidewalk.
Or adjacent public property between a paved roadway and sidewalk. Okay, so we get to that strip of grass.
Yep, that covers the strip of grass.
Is a public way.
Correct. If it's within the public way, but yes.
When would it not be in the public way? Never.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't put any
Yeah.
signs in the grass between your sidewalk and the street.
itself.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, it defines it, I guess. Or adjacent public property between a paved roadway and a sidewalk.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I don't think
sounds right.
I'm assuming it's right. We have to assume it's right.
Yep.
I think that's where the biggest questions have come.
Yep.
So we're now declaring that, in case you're wondering about that strip, this bylaw passes that, well, actually, whether it passes or not, that strip is a public way.
Or part of the
This
public way, yes.
bylaw
Yeah.
is not making that strip of grass a public way.
Correct.
It's just saying, for the purposes of signs, public way includes that.
Correct.
And is there a particular reason, and I don't want to put too fine a point on this, but it clearly says paved roadway? Is there a particular reason for that?
Because we wanted to make just clear that what's a roadway,
We-
what's a public way, we wanted to say, and there aren't any,
Dirt roads anymore.
yeah.
Okay, that's why I was just
Or
wondering if
unpaved,
that was
yeah.
excluding.
There aren't any unpaved roads
Yeah.
that also have a sidewalk. And that's really what we're trying to
Okay.
capture.
Okay, thank you for that
My,
attempt.
how times have changed.
Well, I'm hoping that this additional level of clarity will not only make it clearer to folks, but clearer to those folks who need to enforce
Force it, yeah.
this policy.
And I think even though the board voted to put this on the warrant and voted favorable action at your meeting last night, I think probably based on the fact that we have made those substantive language changes,
Let's do it again.
that it should just be a vote to place the amended article on the warrant.
So you think we need to do both?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could do it in one motion.
Jack, you've gotten all this, right?
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah, I'm listening.
Okay.
wondering.
My signs will not be on public property, even though it wouldn't be adopted until after town meeting.
Yeah,
Nevertheless, I'm going to abide by this town bylaw before then.
You'll have to have some helium balloons or hot air balloons to hold them up.
Well, I just
away
ordered
from-
50 signs, so that, that I'll have to,
Okay, moving right along.
yeah,
So,
sure.
What I'm wondering here is, since we have already voted, do we probably need to make a motion to rescind our former votes and revote,
Sure.
right? So I will make that motion that we rescind our former motions relative to placing this article on the warrant and recommending favorable action. And this is the warrant article entitled, if I can get back to it, zoning bylaw amendment sign. So a motion to rescind that previous vote.
I'll second that motion.
I would agree. Where on the warrant is this going to be near the end of the town meeting? Because this is going to be kind of boring for most people.
That's, I think, our next agenda item is maybe the hardest one tonight, and that's to put all this stuff in an order that makes sense.
Okay. Not too many people are going to understand this or whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
So so we have a motion and I think a second to rescind.
I second it, right, third, whatever.
And I guess people who didn't vote the first time can still vote to rescind it because you're here. So all in favor of rescinding those votes, say yes. Jack?
Yes, Jack.
Aye.
Yes. And Catherine, yes. Okay, now we'll start again. I will make a motion that the Board of Selectmen place the article, I wish I kept my finger
Gee,
on the
get
place.
it right this
I
time,
know.
Catherine, so we don't have to rescind
I
again.
know. The zoning bylaw amendment signs be placed on the warrant for town meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. I'm assuming there's no discussion, so we'll go to a roll call vote. Those in favor? Jack, are you in favor of placing this on the warrant?
Yes.
In its revised form, I guess I should say.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And since I didn't do it together, I will make a second motion that this article relative to signs, that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action as to the amended motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Jack, in favor of favorable action?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so 3-0-0. Thank you.
The last one is the new associate planning board member. And the bad news on this one is that we had thought that it could either be a general bylaw or a zoning bylaw, and it has to be a zoning bylaw. And zoning bylaws, as you know, require a public hearing by the planning board within a certain amount of time, well in advance, so the planning board,
So we missed the opportunity.
so we missed the window.
Okay.
So it's there, it's drafted up, it's ready to go, but we don't have the time to put it on this warrant.
Okay.
It's too bad.
So that will
we'll
have to be passed
Pass
over.
over that one.
So we're down to 18.
Did you hear that, Jack? We're down to 18.
How about that?
How about
Good
that?
job.
And
Okay.
then the one other thing I will just mention is that Article 19, soon to be 18, the election of town officers, also includes the now 3 ballot questions, and the second ballot question relative to the school operating override for the $116,119 now includes that same language around particularly calling out the fact that it's for OPEB and school resource officer funding.
And I guess
Okay, good.
as a reminder, we've been talking most recently about the 2 ballot questions relative to the school overrides, but the 3rd ballot question is actually the following up, if I remember correctly, on our town meeting vote of last year having to do with real estate property tax reductions to qualifying senior citizens. And we don't have to vote the wording on that particular.
That was
we
already,
did.
that was already placed on the ballot a
Oh.
couple meetings ago.
Yeah, okay. So 3 ballot questions in addition to the elections of.
Correct.
Okay. The discussion, I think, is not complete. We talked about trying to decide if there was a particular order we wished for these articles to appear in the warrant. And I'm opening that up for discussion. Anybody have any opinions on that? You mentioned one, Jack, I think.
No, I don't have an opinion. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. And that I'll defer to you and John.
Gee, I was going to refer to John and Jack. It's
We don't want the thing to go on till 6 o'clock at night, and that so we want the important warrant articles earlier rather than later. So that, but then there's a quorum issue. Do we want people to actually exit the Bishop Bucher before? I don't know. It's a
Well, let me suggest this,
difficult
Jack.
question.
It is.
Jack, historically, we've pretty much always had our money or financial questions at the very front end.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's the main purpose why we're having town meetings. is to
Exactly.
do our
I agree.
financial
Absolutely.
business.
Absolutely.
You know, my suggestion would be to, anything that has to do with money, put it at the front end, so we don't end up losing quorum
I have to agree with that one.
anyplace else in the,
Yeah, so the way that it's structured now is in line with the way that it has been over the past number of years, where the first 12 articles are all financial related in some form or fashion, and the Finance Committee has weighed in on each of those 12 articles. So we have basically done what you're talking about, whether you want to change the order of those articles amongst themselves, you know, I'll leave up to the board. But we did follow that general process this time around again.
So I've thought about this several different ways, and each has its pros and cons. I mean, ideally, if the meeting is moving along fast enough and people can see an end, they will, I believe, sit through and have a discussion of, for instance, a sign policy. If we take 4 hours to get through the financial ones, I think then we're at risk for not passing any bylaws. But I don't, but there are risks to doing other things too. You know, putting an article at the end that we think is important so that people will stay, doesn't necessarily mean that they'll stay. It might mean they come late, so that they can vote on that. It also might mean that some people who are uneducated on any particular article, if it's not till the end, don't stay in here to educate, you know, are
well, I
educated.
guess I'd ask you, do you have any idea, because I don't think I do, what might be more attractive to a larger number of folks that we do have in the repertoire here?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe you do,
the thing to keep in mind, a whole different conversation tonight versus where we were at the beginning of last night,
Right.
where we had
Which is
30-plus
why we
articles.
said we
Right.
needed
Right.
to go through them all
So there
before
are
this conversation.
4 non-financial related articles, really, that we're talking about. So the question is whether we want to insert any of them earlier on in the process or
I
not.
see, because we're not at 30-some
Right,
number.
right. I mean,
Okay.
this is,
All of a sudden, I lost track of
Yeah, and
that volume.
it became
Okay.
it becomes for me anyway, a little less of an issue because despite the fact that I do believe there are 2 or 3 of these that for sure will have discussion and others that we can't even imagine that will have a longer discussion than we think, this seems like a very doable agenda relative to this
Yeah.
warrant.
Yeah. I think if it's promoted as, we've got 19 items,
Right.
18,
or 18,
and
rather.
really only 17, because 18
Just to do
requires no action.
Right.
Right. So,
The one that I would say I would really not want to lose quorum on is the acceptance of Settlers Lane as a public way.
all right.
You know, I
So
don't,
maybe
that's at the very end.
So really, maybe look at assume the financial articles are okay in the order they're in, really start looking at the non-financial articles and maybe pushing up the ones that have the highest priority, which, as you've said several times, Settlers Lane is one of them.
Settlers Lane and then
There was another one that was very high.
site plan review.
Right. So we could put those right after the financial right after the financial articles. So that would make them, let's see, so the financial articles go up to, what did you say?
12.
12? I'm sorry. Commence flipping of papers. Why am I? Okay. Article 13 starts with the bylaws. Okay. So perhaps Article 13, given the situation, should be the Settlers Lane, which right now is the last, which doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Because if we're going to lose people, it's going to be by then. So we'll move that up.
And I would
And
say
what's the number? So,
the next one would be the zoning bylaw change site plan review.
which is right now number 15, and
Yep.
probably right after the Settlers Lane one.
Yep.
And
And
there-
if we're doing zoning, we should stick with zoning for the one after that, so then the planning board can make their report. So then the next one would be sign bylaw.
Sign, yeah. So that one would be the third of the zoning bylaw. Now, what does that leave?
That leaves the historic district
Yeah,
and the
Pen-
penalties.
penalties. So this is an issue of, for me anyway, of keeping things together in a logical way that makes sense. But
The penalties
bumping-
generally apply to non-criminal dispositions, so generally apply to zoning more than anything else.
Right, I just, I think the bylaw amendment for the Historic District Commission, Historical Commission should be acted upon.
Yeah.
And so by putting it at the very end, and just someone reading the title, I don't think we're going to lose quorum, and the other thing is, I don't think if we have one article left, we're likely to use our second meeting date, because that would be the other option. But does push that one back quite a bit. What do people think about that? I think we can separate that one and put penalties at the end.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're gonna lose quorum, it's gonna be right after if you keep CPC where it is right now, it's gonna be right after CPC. So whether it's
Yeah.
13th or 15th, I don't know,
It's
is
not a
gonna make
big-
that much of a difference.
No, but, right, but I think we're, at the moment, it would be 13th or 18th,
Yeah.
right? And that could make a difference, because people will have sat for,
So maybe the historic district is the first up after CPC, and then we go to Settlers Lane
I
from
think
there,
that's right. And then we keep
which
the
is where it
zoning
is
ones
now.
together, but really just reorder them in order of priority.
So just to be clear, it's historic district bylaw amendment 13, which is where it is now. Then Settlers Lane at 14. Then site plan review at 15. Then signs at 16. Then penalties at 17,
Right,
and elections at 18.
right. That sounds reasonable to me. I'm confident that we can finish it in one meeting in 4 hours.
Yeah, and what I was thinking about while you guys were back and forth is, I think if our moderator, in her opening statements before the meeting, takes the bull by the horns and acknowledges that we had an overabundance of agenda items last year, and some of them, they were pretty heavy-duty, and, you know, we've heard the messages from the public that they were not happy with both too long a meeting and a second meeting. This year, we've got 18 items, agenda items, and we've tried to prioritize them so that we take care of our most important business and then leave some time for discussion later on, if it's needed.
Right, and to that point, I think perhaps we've taken this,
We've heard you.
we've heard you,
Yeah.
we've reduced,
Yeah.
and in return, we would like to remind everyone that it's all important business, and please,
And we need you to be here.
please stay till the
Yeah.
end of the meeting,
Exactly.
which, we can't force people to do that, but I do think that could be part of the moderator's sort of initial, if she wishes to, that would be our recommendation.
I mean, Paul Weaver used to be fairly firm about some of this,
Right.
this type of thing.
I don't think he ever spoke to what the elephant in the room, which happened almost every year for one reason or another, that someone would come for some important vote that they thought was important, and then
And then vacate.
leave. I'm not sure that he ever spoke to that, possibly because he never thought he could influence it, but,
Oh, he did, but the problem was, when he did it, I do remember him doing it at least once, if not twice, the people who he intended it for had already left. So you're right, it went on
right.
deaf ears.
So, good to put that at the beginning of the meeting. Okay.
So the other piece, in terms of looking at the order of the warrant articles,
Yeah.
did the board want to talk at all about ordering the CPA articles? Changing the order from what the current iteration is?
This is, and I could be really wrong about this, but the school, particularly the overrides and the CPC, the larger CPC articles, I think, are the ones that are going to generate discussion. But that being said,
Yep. And they should.
no one, I don't think anyone is going to, well, I'd like to think that no one would get up in the middle of a CPC article because, well, if we want to be sure that all of these articles have an equal chance of being discussed,
Yeah.
we ought to put the most likely to be discussed one at the end, so people will stay because they want to talk about that last one. So to that end, I guess I see it. And they could all stay the same, except moving 3 to 8, 3 to back to being the last one, to being 8, and leaving the others in that order, in the order that they're in. Does that make sense? So
Leaving everything's in the everything else in the order that it's currently set up. So
Right.
it would, after the administrative, the 2 administrative, then go into town hall debt, then Habitat for Humanity, then the community house, then the 2 open space, and then the Maple Woods.
I think that will ensure that the people who are interested in talking about Maple Woods will stick around. And we won't be shortchanging the other CPC articles. Just because they're less controversial or less money doesn't, mean they shouldn't be given
I
their
think
due
they're both.
consideration.
I think we definitely
So-
normally do town hall debt
First,
Right up front.
anyway.
first up,
Right.
because
Yep.
Right.
I don't know about the others.
I think it's, I don't think we usually think about it other than town hall debt seems to be the most, sort of routine, and so we get that one out of the way. It may be the most
become a normal
critical
part
to
of our
the,
budget.
to the running of the operation, because if that doesn't pass, we've got to find that money somewhere else, probably within this budget. Is that a true statement?
Yes?
So, good idea to have that one first anyway. Okay, does that make sense to everyone, Jack, John?
Yes.
Okay,
Jack, are you still there?
No sleeping.
uh-oh.
I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay,
Jack-
we have got a
That's
little
what they
delay
get.
sometime.
Just doing a test. Check.
Okay, John, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Jack, the one other thing, just when we talked earlier today, you talked about potentially wanting to revisit, because you weren't able to join last night's meeting. Did you want to discuss any of the warrant articles?
It was CPC article.
Yeah,
Okay.
wanna, what would you like to discuss?
I want to be in favor of it.
Okay, so we're talking about the which there
There's what, 6?
are 8.
8.
All right.
Are you talking about all of them, one of them? Do we need to re-vote all of them? I mean, it would give,
The main one.
puts your name on,
Well, you and John had a 1-1 vote last night. 1 in favor, 1 against,
Oh,
right?
that was on the Maple
on the
Woods.
Maple Woods one, right?
Yeah. I want to vote on that one.
Okay, so I don't disagree, and we can certainly do that. But procedurally,
You'd rescind last night's.
yes, we'd have to rescind last night's, but I'm wondering, I guess that separates that one out, because it's the only one that will have 3 votes.
Actually, the first one has 3 votes, too.
Okay, so we've got a mixed bag anyway.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
And there are,
so-
if you go through the warrant, there's a fair amount of 3 O's and 2 O's, just
Okay,
depending on
so-
who's been here.
So let me see. We haven't changed the order, so this is a motion to rescind votes taken last night on Article 12, CPA appropriations, Section 3, relative to the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen. That's a motion to rescind last night's vote.
I guess so,
Do
yeah.
you want to identify them while you talk?
The amount and the project. Because we're now going to change the number of it.
Okay, so yes, so this is the present number 3, but it is the Harbor Light request for $750,000.
Right.
Right. So the motion is to rescind that vote from last evening. And
I will second
there's a
that motion.
second. So all in favor of rescinding that vote? Jack?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes, yes. Okay. So we will take the vote again. I'll make a new motion. I recommend that the Board of Selectmen,
Oh, yeah, one of these trick questions. Be careful, Jack. I got caught last night twice.
move that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on the CPA article, presently numbered 3, which involves a $750,000 grant to Harbor Light Community Partners.
Now,
So this is recommending favorable action.
I will second this with the caveat that if you are in favor of it, you want to not vote yes. Is that correct?
No, John, no, say that again. No, John.
This is recommending favorable action. If you want to...
John, what are you
Oh,
doing?
recommending okay,
Right.
all right. Okay.
Right.
Second.
Okay.
Second the motion, thank you.
No caveat on the motion.
Unless there's further discussion, which is referring to you, Jack, if you don't want to have any further discussion, we will vote on the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, or the motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action
Okay,
on
yes.
the CPA article, $750,000, okay? It's been
Yes.
moved and seconded. And we'll take a roll call vote as we need to because you're remotely. So
Right,
Jack,
right.
are you in favor of recommending favorable action?
Yes, based on all the contingencies we've already, adopted.
Okay. John, are you in
Yes.
favor?
Yes,
So
aye.
John is a yes. I will continue to be a no. So now we
Okay.
have 2-1-0.
Okay?
So we've all voted. It's on the warrant. We've got a recommendation. Finance and Advisory is going to give a recommendation at town meeting. They had a few more questions that they wanted resolved.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other articles that you'd like to revisit, Jack?
No, thank you.
Okay. So have we done what we need to do in order for this
I think so.
to actually be executed?
Yep.
Okay, then we can actually take a motion, which is the last motion in the book, which John has, to close the warrant again, but this time close and execute it.
All right. Oh, you mean I get to shoot it?
You do.
Jeez, thank you. I knew I got that license for a reason. I move the Board of Selectmen close and execute. I feel like
Execute, John.
I should be wearing a black hood or something. And execute the April 6, 2019 annual town meeting warrant, and further, to authorize such revisions as recommended by town council. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No further?
Totally ready to do this.
All right, all those in favor, Jack, you first.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, Catherine, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
good job.
So we now have a warrant, and you guys can get busy turning it into a real document.
Not that we
Great.
haven't done already.
Okay, we've closed the warrant. Let me just make sure we did. so-
Jackie's got a big smile, Jack.
Yeah.
You can't see it yet, but
Well, it's a smile and a grimace together, because now I think she's got a lot of work to do, although I'm going to guess that 50% of it, at least, is already done.
Let's hope more than that.
I know, I was going to make it 90, but I didn't want to make
That
presumptions.
90 is a little much.
Really generous.
Well, you know, I could see where that happened. Okay, so that concludes the regular, the initial executive session and the regular meeting. And the motion, I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session.
Another executive session? Really?
Yep.
That's all.
It's the, is there a motion to adjourn from open session? I made the motion, is there a
So
second?
moved. Second.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yes,
Yep,
yes,
yep.
yes. So I will make a motion that the Board of Selectmen adjourn. Did I not adjourn? No.
Adjourn, you're just moving into executive
Moving
session.
into
Move to executive
session.
Oh, God, another one. Okay.
We'll get that one straight.
Sorry. So I'm going, but, so the next item on the agenda, I guess, is that the Board of Selectmen move into executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21.3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares, and not to return to open session. And this is an executive session regarding the interim town administrator. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
And we need a roll call vote for that as well. So Jack?
Yep, yes.
Aye.
Catherine, yes. Okay, so we're in the last executive session. Yes.